How's it going today? I'm going to be breaking down a commercial shoot I did for a local farm, Creekmore's Place. This is something we did with what was a really light setup, really basic setup. I was just the DP on this. Um, we were going for like a more upbeat look, more just commercial friendly, more like can post and it shows off what they're doing instead of having to get a whole marketing thing is what they wanted. So for this, all we felt we needed was two tungsten, or I guess we actually did have three lights. I was wrong. We had three lights. We had two par 64s, two par cans, and then we had a open face 350-watt tungsten light. So we shot mostly with those par cans, and then we just filled in a little bit with that um, floodlight. And then we did bring an abundance of negative fill. We did bring a good bit of diffusion. We had a what was it, like 4-foot umbrella, and then just a bunch of silk that we had. Starting off here, so up here we did have that umbrella just for the sun, because that sun was all the way up here shining through. And so to stop a little bit of that, diffuse it so the highlights weren't crazy here, and instead we got that nice smooth roll off that we get, that little almost like a gradient, almost a wrap on that subject. We just had that umbrella up here, and then so with that umbrella, we also walled off here the shooting side with negative fill, and then we were shooting from over here. So this is where I was shooting from, right next to the negative fill. That gave us a lot of like ability to work with our contrast, and then to fill in, because we were already, most of this level here was almost purely from that the sun and like the diffused sun. But just to fill it in a little bit, we did add not daylight colored lights, obviously, but we only really had tungsten on the set. So we had the two 1K pars shooting here just to fill it in. And that did help get, because we were shooting like downwards with it from just to like literally just next to the umbrella, just a little bit to the side. And so that helped with our wrap, gave us a little bit there. Whereas like on, we were getting like, I'll zoom in a little bit here. On the upper hand, we were getting like here, a little bit of this highlight is probably added in. We get like, we fill it in here. That's a lot due to the pars that we were using, the lights that we used, the lights that we added. Whereas here, all that fill, obviously all this, all the light you're getting there, that's gonna be the shine here. That's gonna be the sun. But we did, I felt, to me, it gave that feel that it was worth it, gave a little warmth to it, something that we wouldn't have had with just the diffused sun. And then that next still, we used the same lighting setup. Just to zoom in a little bit, it's just him putting the tomato down. We did, I think, 3 shots. One was wider, one was I don't know if we used the wide in the final, actually. This is a bit old. And so, and this is not the final still. This one was a tad, the levels were a bit higher. I don't know how I got this still. It was not just a straight screen grab, but we still had that diffusion over there. It was just, he went down a little bit. And then I think if I was to have changed something, I probably would have tried to maybe cut one of those par cans and just have one par can shooting in instead of two. Because at this point, he was blocking where the sun would have been hitting here. That's the level we're getting from that par can, because it was like right behind here shooting into that area. So without the par can, I don't think we would have had those crazy overexposed tomatoes over here. I think we would have kept a little bit more contrast. I think we could have had like a shadowier side shooting, like on this side we didn't have as much shadow, and the sun was over here like going down. Like we were like getting more shadow as the day was going on. So I don't know why I decided to keep that second park in there, but you can't really go back and fix those things. And then that was the whole setup here. We had another thing where we just pretty much copy and pasted the setup for him walking to like bring the tomatoes to a car. And then we moved inside where we had to use all 3 lights. And then a bunch of negative fill just to zoom in on the still. This was probably my favorite setup of the 3 that we did. I know the other one was kind of copy and paste, but so for this it was a relatively simple still, or a relatively simple setup. This wall here, we had a large piece of black cloth, not duvetine, not trash bags, black cloth, and that helped get that contrast here. Get a little bit of contrast here. It didn't bounce as much as we would have had if it was that. And then like just to zoom in again so you can see that contrast. And then over here we had an umbrella again, but of course we're inside, so it's not for the sun. Instead, on the same stand, we had the umbrella hooked up too. We also had 2 park hands shooting through it, and then we had the open face 350 watt flood shooting just a bit farther back, and that gave level to a lot of like everything. Like it beforehand, we were really mostly getting level on her, and that gorgeous wrap didn't get affected by the flood, which is why I decided to keep it. It was just we needed a little bit more back here, because even though you love that contrast between your subject and the background, you don't want to get it lost, especially here versus here. If this background was as dark as the hair over there, we would definitely be having some issues just contrast wise, which brings me up to the main thing that I was upset at myself for in the still. We definitely could have boomed a light over her and I probably could have utilized one of those park hands and just pushed the other one in a bit more and had the flood still where it is, and then utilized the other park hand just as a little backlight. We probably could have just opened the aperture a little bit more to work with it, to work with our exposure, so we don't have to fight with that, because I think this one was pretty close at like a 4 or something, F4, F 5 something. Could have possibly been even more closed, just because we wanted that environment feel. She wanted so these 2 that you see in the stills, those are the 2 owners, and they wanted it to feel more comfy, more like this is the environment they work in, it's true to them. So we wanted a deeper depth of field here, but if I could have just had that backlight, given a little bit of edge, particularly over here, if I had an edge over here, I feel like the shot, just a little outline surrounding her, I feel like that would be one of my favorite stills I've done this last summer. And then you can see it continues over here. This is another reason I feel like we definitely could have done with that second one overhead, because you can see there's enough source going through where I don't think the wrap would have changed if we pushed in, but I think stuff like this, light leaking through, kind of looking really sourcey on spots like this, looking sourcey and some highlights in there, like I'm seeing a highlight there, not really on her particularly. I wouldn't say her face really is that sourcey, but it's definitely like on her shirt, maybe on her body a little bit, you get a bit of sourciness. And I think we had utilized just giving a little bit more exposure into the camera and then backlighting. We definitely wouldn't have had all that sourciness. We also would have once again had a better image with that edge. And then as you can see here, just a shout to where that flood was, it was a good bit farther back, because over in front of him is where we had the umbrella with everything shooting through. So this is all the doing of that floodlight, just giving some level here. That was another big reason we decided to put it there. So they had an open face door here, and if you've been there, you would know that's like their whole stand. That's their whole thing. It's pretty open. It's pretty like rural. It's a unique vibe to it. And so we were just trying to replicate that sunlight. We thought it looked really beautiful. And then just to show off that wrap again, we did have this is the bag that he's handing over in this still. It's kind of just a very still demonstration of it, how that wrap leads to a shadow. But the negative fill was obviously farther from her, whereas in the other frame it was right there, right next to her, right next to the subject. And in this one, there's a good bit of distance because it was all the way over on that wall. But we can still get the wrap with a good bit of contrast, a good bit of interest. Shadow here, light here, you see that. And then just one other thing, I thought I had this still pulled in here. We did some interviews for them. And so it's nothing crazy, very simple setups. That top one we shot, I think just straight a Parcan, straight at them, and then a backlighting Parcan, and then that open garage in the background. We weren't too worried about overexposing for the vibe they were going for. It was more of a Instagram type thing, Facebook type thing there. So we just weren't, I wasn't too worried about overexposing the background for the vibe of this. But as long as you could see them fine and they look good. And then here is back at that first place. The other one's at a farmer's market that they work out of. You can actually see that open garage I was talking about. But whenever you zoom in, oh shoot, you can see we shot from, I guess, this side on camera. This side we shot shooting into them. We had a umbrella set up with I think we just used the OpenFace 350. And then we kind of just let natural light do the rest. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was a setup that got the job done. It looked visually appealing throughout all of it. We definitely could have positioned it a bit better and had the Parcan set up there too, because we're getting a lot more on her, where it still does look visually appealing on her. Oh shoot. It looks visually appealing on her to me. But on him, we're not getting we're still getting enough level because we're outside. We're exposing to the outside. That's all good. But we're not getting any wrap. We're just getting kind of a flat body, flat face. You're getting a little bit on his body, but that's more natural light. That's not my doing. That's not the lighting doing. And yeah, so some of the strong parts about this is as long as you diffuse your light, you're gonna get, like, the bigger you diffuse it, obviously the better wrap. But if you position it right and diffuse it, big thing is you'll get that wrap. But this is one of the first shoots I utilized a large negative fill. Usually I'll just push in, and we had like I don't know, it was probably like 2x4 over here. Whereas over here we had a wall of just fabric. Like, I couldn't tell you, at least like 10 feet wide and like her height tall. And then honestly, I don't think it could have hurt if we went over a little bit over her head, like I guess on this side, but just a little bit over her head, got in like a not like all the way, but if we had gone a little bit into that ceiling, we definitely had a bit of bounce up here that gave a little bit of highlights up here more than you were getting over here. And so that wouldn't have hurt because everything was like kind of white and metal inside. I wasn't really mad at any of the shots that we did that day. All of them I was pretty happy with. I liked all of the fallout that we had in the shadows. I liked all of the gradients, all of the wraps, especially on her face, especially on this hand. There's stuff I would have fixed, but at the end of the day, satisfied with the results. Anywho, bye-bye.